This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
Mark, were you a big fan, or are you a big fan of Jerry Seinfeld?
You know, I love his stuff, but I'll admit I've watched very little of it. That was back in my college days when I was in the library till midnight, so I didn't watch a lot of TV. Yeah, my twin brother lets me know how much I missed out there, but I've seen certainly a number of highlights, and love Kramer in particular. But hey, that was a time ago. It's hard to believe it's been so many years.
Oh my gosh, it's been a very, very long time, and because of that show, Mr. Jerry Seinfeld is a billionaire. And you might remember a little bit of this. Here you go.
What's the show about?
It's about nothing.
No story?
No, forget the story.
You gotta have a story.
Who says you gotta have a story?
So everybody I know is a character on the show.
Right.
And it's about nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
So you're saying I go into NBC and tell them I got an idea for a show about nothing.
Exactly.
They say, what's your show about? I say nothing.
There you go.
I think you may have something here.
Well, they definitely had something because nearly half of that billion, actually is about $465 million to Jerry Seinfeld, came from the syndication deals from this show alone. And, you know, when it comes to showbiz, the regular payments from residuals they're considered mailbox money, right? You open the mailbox, there's the check from the commercial, the show that aired, what have you. How can we create the same for us in retirement, Mark? How do we get this mailbox money?
Oh, that's a great question. And that's the best kind of money, right? That residual income that just comes and never ends. Yeah, that's what we want most. That's the best kind of income without question, that kind that just keeps coming and never ends. And you absolutely can create it. As a matter of fact, in the absence of pensions, which once governed the retirement world, people are desperately looking for a means of money that they can't outlive. That's their great fear. The number one fear isn't dying. The number one fear is running out of money. And the way we solve that problem, well, there's many ways, but a key way we solve it is with a unique financial tool known as an annuity. And there's so much gross disinformation and misunderstanding out there about annuities. And the key thing is that annuities are not just one thing. I mean, there's 2,000 odd insurance companies out there, and most of them, life insurance companies, that is, most of them offer these products and many variations on them. So there's literally thousands of varieties there. So it doesn't mean just one thing, but there are some common characteristics. And the key one goes back 2,000 years to the Roman legionnaires. And that was the idea that when the Roman legionnaires retired, they would receive an annual payment, an annuity. It comes from the Latin term annos, which means year. And that payment would come to them as long as they lived. And that idea has continued over the centuries to the present day. Matter of fact, I love some of the Jane Austen stories, Sense and Sensibility, I think, was back in 1811, was written, and Pride and Prejudice, all these stories about these wealthy people who have annuities. And the idea was that they had a living stipend, money that came to them every month or on a regular basis, mailbox money, as you may call it, that they can't outlive. Well, we can do that through insurance companies. In fact, they're the only institutions in the world that can do this because they study mortality trends. And so they deal not only with premature death in the form of life insurance, but the other end of that stick, and that is people living too long. They know the mortality trends. And so they can create mortality credits, which is a whole other conversation, but it's a means of getting a higher payout than we can get through variable investments in the stock market, for example. And not only higher payouts, but more dependable payouts that we can't outlive. So some people call these play checks rather than paychecks. Those play checks can come to us every month. So what I do personally, I'll get personal here. Periodically I will harvest money out of my 401k plan, for example, or maybe I get a windfall. I'll sell a rental property or something, and I'll purchase an annuity. I have 5 of them now. I will certainly own more of them before I fully retire. And I do it, frankly, mostly with my wife and my son in mind, because I want to make sure that when I'm dead and gone, they have income that they can't outlive, that they don't have to ever worry about their basic dignity. I may not be making them rich, as I often say, but I will guarantee they won't be poor. And annuities are the only product in the world that really can do that on a contractually guaranteed basis. And the idea of a contractual guarantee is very reassuring to people, particularly, I find that I work with a lot of widows and widowers, and particularly in some of the older clients who may have come out of a traditional homemaking situation where maybe the one spouse wasn't as involved with the finances. the idea of having their future secured in this manner with mailbox money is really, really a big deal. It gives them optimism about the future, and the studies show that they live longer when they have this. The studies also show that they're happier, which is kind of a no-brainer, right? If you got money coming in every month, of course you're happier.
I was just going to say, of course, I'm ecstatic. And if anytime I find $20 in the dryer, I'm ecstatic. So I can't imagine, every single month having that, that mailbox money, if you will. And it goes back to the fear that we talked about earlier that, the number one fear is running out of money. So if you know that you're, I guess, in this essence, really kind of replacing that paycheck with these playchecks, then it seems like you're going to go into retirement with more confidence, more excited, right? You're not thinking, well, here I am just watching my pile of money dwindle down. That money's being replenished every single month, right?
That's right. It keeps coming. Matter of fact, that brings up an interesting idea. I call it living up to your privileges. My dad and I had a conversation about this once. We talked about the fact that he has multiple pensions. He's from that generation. My generation doesn't have it. But I was talking to him about how annuities were becoming so much more popular. And he says, well, you're basically telling me that the longer I live, the more I get to beat the house, right? Now, we live in Las Vegas, so you got to understand the analogy. But for him, that was enticing, this idea that I can beat the house. It gives him an incentive to live another month longer. And not only that, more importantly, it gives him an incentive to spend the money. If you know the money's coming in the next month,
then it's okay that the money goes out, right?
That's right. Why not enjoy it? Why not live a little bit more? Because in the absence of guaranteed income, we end up in this sometimes neurotic state where we're afraid to spend money. It was interesting that Susie Orman came out recently and she was surveyed about what's called the 4% rule, which is an idea that came out in 1994 with William Bangham, a certified financial planner, who said, if you have a mutual fund portfolio, you can spend 4% of that portfolio each year and never run out of money for the rest of your life. Well, that's proven not to be true. And Susie Orman was responding, and she said, well, you shouldn't spend a penny more than you have to. That's basically what she said, which I thought was quite another extreme, because that then takes all of the quality of life out of life. If we can't take the grandkids out for ice cream or movies or for a vacation or something, then why?
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah, what is the point of having worked all those years? And so there has to be a happy medium. And I love the fact that annuities are a unique financial tool that can fill that gap, that can assure your basic dignity, can assure your living expenses, and incentivize you to actually enjoy that money. So you're not living in a state of perpetual constraint, thinking, I got to save it for a rainy day, I got to save it for a rainy day, I got to save it for a rainy day. Because the truth is, your kids won't. When your kids inherit it, they're going to have no problem enjoying it. So you ought to enjoy a little bit of it yourself while you're around to see it.
What is that first meeting like? What am I going to take away from it, being that's the first time I've sat down with you?
Well, if the purpose of the conversation is specifically to discuss annuities, then it's going to start off taking 3 or 4 steps backwards and kind of seeing where people are coming from. What's their understanding? What have they heard? What do they believe? What are their concerns? And then we do just education. We go straight to the whiteboard and we start explaining the key features, because once people understand the features, I've never yet found someone who disliked the concept. I mean, if you dislike annuities, you dislike Social Security, because that's essentially what Social Security is. It's a payment for the rest of your life. But we got to recognize that there's different kinds of annuities. I mean, some of them are designed to safely grow your money outside of the market. Some are designed to grow it inside the market. There's different ways they can be structured. But typically people want to be outside of the market, safely growing their money when they get to this preservation of assets stage. Or they may be looking to create income for themselves or for others that may, live longer than they do. And so it's a way where we can create income over multiple people's lives. It's not just your own life. It can be your life. It can be the life of a child with special needs, for example. It can be the life of a widow. I mean, this
really
is the dignity money.
Wealth is what you're trying to create, a little bit generational wealth, right?
You are, because to the degree that we can guarantee income, we can also then leave other monies growing for other purposes as well. And so we want to segment money. We don't want to think of it all as one bucket. We need to have multiple buckets with different purposes for different portions of our money. And it's in that structured manner that we're able to build guardrails in, both on our income as well as on our estate goals.
So a few weeks ago, Mark, you might remember we did a story about how people over the age of 75 are the fastest growing segment of the workforce. That is, of course, disturbing. I have friends who haven't been able to save well, and they just say, oh, you know what, I'm probably going to work until I die. And of course, we hate hearing that. So I have another stat for you. Even though there are more people working into their 70s, by age 75, 92% of people in the country are retired. So, I mean, it's coming, but you probably will not die at your desk. I hope not. You will retire, maybe later than what you thought, but you'll get there. Either by choice, maybe even due to health reasons, or by force from your employer. So, Mark, if there is someone listening right now that is of the mind of, well, I guess I'll just work forever attitude, what's your message to them?
Multiple, but don't give up. I mean, if your hope was to retire earlier, there's certainly ways. Anything we can do now will get us in a better position for the future. But the reality is we have to come to grips with the idea that we don't always retire on our own timeline. And so I can think of a story of a man that I just absolutely idolized when I was a youth. He was a youth leader in my church, very prominent attorney in town, came to visit with me years ago, and I discovered candidly that he had very little money saved, and he was over 60 at the time, and I was absolutely shocked. He was banking on certain inheritances, which were quickly spent when he got them, but his attitude was that, well, I'm an attorney. I'm not digging ditches. I can continue to work forever. And I thought, well, that's wonderful, because my whole goal is to get people to a work-optional lifestyle. I don't have any problem with people working longer than normal. I personally plan to for very personal reasons, but we can't plan on retiring on our own timeline. And that's the thing that really struck me from my interaction with him, was that I've had children, who have health problems, and we've had health problems throughout our family. And so I know that life doesn't always cooperate with our own personal timelines, and he hasn't had that so much. And that was the point I politely tried to get across to him, was what if something happens to you? And there actually was an incident that happened with his spouse not long after that conversation that should have, I thought, underscored the fact that we don't control these things. So I read recently that something like 41% of Americans retire earlier than expected for circumstances beyond their control. Mm-hmm. It could have been health issues, or it could have been economic issues with an employer, or who knows what. But the bottom line is, don't bank on the fact that you'll just always be able to work. Let's bank on ourselves and put some money away now, just in case, because we just don't know what's coming. We don't know what's coming in life.
Right. I mean, hence the word plan, right? We want to plan for the unexpected. We want to plan for the inevitable of finally retiring. Have I done everything I need to do? And, if you have that mentality of, I guess I'll just work forever, then, oh my gosh, you certainly need to be somebody that calls in and sits down with Mark one-on-one, because you may have that mentality, but you also probably maybe don't know about all the different tools and strategies that are available to you to help you grow your income, protect your income, build that retirement that you've been working so hard for. Because, yeah, you're going to turn 70, 75, 80, and you'll probably be phased out of most positions, I would assume. So you need to make sure you have a plan in place. And for those interested, Mark, walk me through this. So, what am I getting out of this first time meeting with you?
Well, hopefully clarity. I mean, that's our big goal. We also want people to be able to determine if we're a good fit to be able to help them. And so there's a number of issues that go into that. And a lot of it's just listening very intently on my part, asking questions to try to really clarify what people want. And then we're able to lay out, usually on a whiteboard, where they're at versus where they want to go. We can see where some weaknesses are in the current plan. We can definitely see opportunities and identify those. People invariably end up taking pictures of these whiteboard models that I use, because it helps them to understand at a glance, how do we move forward? How do we improve our situation? Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about, is how can we make things better for you so you can live the kind of life you want to live? But if we just go along blindly, assuming that everything's okay, again, none of us know what we don't know. And that's, I think, the biggest value of people meeting with me, is that, for 32 odd years, I've been talking to hundreds of people. And so between that and my educational studies and thousands and thousands of hours reading on these topics, I've picked up a thing or two, and we can help people. And, it's not that we're the be all and end all. I certainly have my blind spots, but the truth is, we want to help people get clarity so they can live the kind of lives they want to live. And if life doesn't cooperate, if health problems come, My wife slipped and fell a few years ago, and when we took her in for an MRI after whacking her head on the ice-covered concrete, what we discovered was that she had multiple sclerosis. Well, we didn't see that coming. We have kids with health problems. She already had her hands full. So things like that we just can't foresee. And when they come upon us, we have to be able to adapt, and we need to have plans in place. And so the sooner we start talking, the sooner we start planning, the better the opportunities in the future.
One of the writers for The Motley Fool says she intentionally is not factoring in Social Security as part of her retirement income. She says that way, whatever she gets in benefits will just be extra. So you think that's going a little too far, Mark, or do you think there's something to this? I mean, I kind of like it, honestly.
Well, actually, I hear this a lot. I think people under the age of 40, certainly under the age of 35, are often saying the same thing. And I try to reassure them. I'm personally confident that Social Security will be there in some form. It will be different. There are absolutely changes that are going to have to be made. If Congress doesn't step up to the plate the way that they did in 1983, if they don't do something like that again, then here within the next 10 years, we're going to have a reduction of approximately 25% in benefits that the government will be able to pay out. So absolutely, yes, the government's going to have to do things. But I would say absolutely, yes, the program's going to be there for us. But one of the things I really love about this manner of thinking is that, heaven forbid, it's not there. You're okay. If it is there, well, then you're just going to have extras. You're going to have more opportunities. The thing I caution people with is that Social Security was never designed to be a primary source of income. We have to think about it differently. And frankly, most of us should think about it as a primary source of funding our future health care, because most people go into retirement without a clue what to expect in terms of health care costs. And Fidelity Investments does a study every year. They came out this last year and they said basically that a married couple needs to have about $320,000 in health care related expenses over the course of their retirement. And that's not including long-term care. So some academics have actually come out and said, we probably should think of Social Security as a means of funding the ever more expensive healthcare costs that people who are living longer invariably are going to face. Mm-hmm. Interesting thought, huh? That's a totally different way of looking at things.
Yeah, that is interesting. And, when it comes to Social Security, I know a lot of people put that in their pocket and they go, whoop, I got that. That's going to help with my retirement. It is. But correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark. You cannot just say Social Security and a little bit of my 401k, that's my retirement plan. That's not going to cut it, right?
Well, not for most people. What I typically hear is the average couple is looking for about $6,000 a month in living expenses. Now, I certainly have clients who want $15,000 to $20,000 a month because that's been closer to their lifestyle. And there are a few out there that want, only $3,000 to $4,000 a month. They tend to be the exception. But Social Security isn't getting you up to $6,000 a month generally. In some cases it does, when we're dealing with two professional spouses, and certainly if they defer until claiming until a later date like age 70. But generally speaking, yes, we're going to have some savings to supplement that. And most people don't have pensions. So again, savings is a key. We just got to be prepared for whatever may come. And Social Security will be there again, I'm convinced. It just is not going to make up all of the income that people sometimes assume. So if you haven't done it yet, I say, come visit with us. Go to SSA, that's Social Security Administration, SSA.gov. If you haven't set up an account, do that, create an account, pull off your retirement benefits statement, bring that into us, and we'll do an analysis for you and your spouse or you individually, but especially with married couples. We want to do that. It's a free service we offer to people. It'll give you a lot more clarity as to what you can expect at what times, when it'd be best to claim, and so on. Take the chance to be able to share some thoughts and feelings with folks. Come on in, give us a call. We'd love to help out.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.